My name is Daniel Perez. It's on the slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background and my research. I'm not going to stay on it too long. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about preparing yourself to get into a career in health research, or what types of things you can do after doing grad school in kinesiology. I know you guys are mostly undergrads, so I'm going to talk also a bit about actually getting into grad school and what that is like. So I think you got a really good idea of what a career path can look like. So I'm not going to talk too much about my own background, but I have been here at York forever. I've been here for 13 years. I did my undergraduate degree here, then I did a master's here, and I'm in the final year of my PhD. And for over the time that I've been here, I've done work in a lot of different areas. For those of you that know our supervisor of the Ripple Lab, we do a lot of diverse research. So my master's work was about walkability and physical activity for women in Jane Finch. So it was a project where I was doing door-to-door work for surveys, and it was an epidemiological project. We were understanding practically what people were actually doing. And my PhD work is about bioethics. It's understanding how people, what people's opinions and responses are to pandemic influenza issues. Things like, how do we distribute limited resources in a pandemic? Who gets, care first? Who, what are the responsibilities of the doctors and nurses, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the other educational background I've done, I did a diploma for in health services and health policy research through the Ontario Training Centre for Health Services and Policy Research. I have done a health psychology diploma here at York. I completed the teaching assistant certificate in teaching program, and I keep up with a lot of other courses on in vivo SPSS, and I'm going to talk more about how you guys can do these sorts of things later. So as well as having been a TA here at York for a lot of years now, I've also done several contract positions at Cancer Care Ontario. I've done 2 different contract positions at the University of Toronto, and of course a wide variety of contract positions through my supervisor working on grants here at York. This is my current list of publications. So basically, as you go through your master's and your PhD, the more projects that you work on, the broader that you get, the more opportunities that you have to be involved in these projects. So, there's only 2 there that I'm actually the lead author from, which was my master's work. But because I've been involved in so many different teams and projects, I have gotten opportunities to be involved in other things. So, I'm going to hang out on this slide for a while. Coming out of grad school, there are a ton of different ways that you can go for the future. So we have, these are some very, very general ideas. You can work in academia, you can work for the government, you can work in industry, you can work for agencies or institutions. So academic careers. When I'm talking about an academic career, I'm talking about post-secondary education, so either a college or a university position. Now, mainly thinking of university-style academic position, you have some of the pros. You have the potential for a very long career, which is good because it takes a really long time to get started. If you want to teach at the university level, almost always you're going to need a PhD. Otherwise, you're going to be relegated to contract faculty positions. So much like the part-time positions that have tend to be the way into working at college, nowadays, the ways that you get into working as a professor in a university is a very, very difficult process. So there are positions called contract faculty where you may just have 1 semester worth of job security at a time. And the tenure track faculty, which is what people think of when they think of, Professor X that has been here forever, Those positions are extremely difficult. They only might open one every several years, and typically there'll be several hundred PhDs applying for each one of those. So you need to be the best out of a couple hundred PhD graduates in order to get one of these positions. And in order to really even be on the radar of these people, you need to constantly be publishing. You need to constantly be getting research funding. And so it's a very, very difficult process. Now, once you make it through that door, you can have the stability of a really long career. You can do really innovative work. You can apply for research grants and push the boundaries of knowledge in whatever area that you're passionate about. And it really gives you a lot of freedom in the sense that you're going to be teaching only about 20% of your time, then probably about 60–70% of your time will be research, and the last 10–20% is what's called service, where you work on committees, you supervise students for their thesis and that kind of stuff. Now, the obvious downsides, aside from what I mentioned about how difficult it is to get in, is that it takes a long time. You're going to be miserable for a really, really long time, and you're not going to have any free time until you're very old. Tell us more. Yeah. I'm getting really excited. Now, talking about academia, one thing I'll never forget. This was quite a few years ago when I was doing my master's. We had a conference come, and we had a faculty member that I'd worked with before come and give a talk about the experience of working as a professor. And the way that she said this was so earnest and like almost happy that it made me very, very sad inside. So what she said is, the great thing about going into academia is you have so much freedom that, if you prefer to work, from like 9 to 7 on Monday to Friday, you could do that and just, do your readings when you're at home at night. Or you could just work 6 days a week. You could just work 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday, and you have so much freedom. So there is a lot of work involved in academia, and it's not for everybody. But if you're really passionate about the work that you're doing and you're excited, it's not something that typically you would just start out in your undergrad thinking, yeah, I know what I'm going to do until I'm 40, like that's fine. But it's just to give you an idea of what the trajectory is like. Okay. So working for government. Now, this is mainly where I'm looking to head, because my background in health policy and health services research. So some of the great benefits is that it's great long-term prospects. Government jobs have great pension, great benefits, solid salary. You're not going to make as much as a professor would, but you make good money. And you have the possibility to be working with the implementation. So say you're doing health research. As an academic, when it comes time to say, okay, well, we need to come up with a new program to incentivize, healthy behavior. We're going to do, a fitness course tax credit for people. Well, you could be involved in the process of implementing that and designing these new ways when government is trying to improve health. You'd be involved in that. Now, the cons, obviously, if you're working for the government, they're political considerations. I don't know how many people are familiar with Insight. Insight, it's a heroin treatment program based out of Vancouver. Okay, so what they did was they got a clinic, and they staffed the clinic with a doctor, some nurses, and social workers. And they gave drug addicts free needles. They took their old needles and gave them a room to go sit in to get high. This sounds crazy. It was one of the most effective public health interventions that they've ever done with this population. It meant that if somebody overdosed, they were right there with medical professionals. It meant that if you took, an average person who was reusing needles and sharing needles that could have been, communicating hepatitis, HIV, other diseases to the other drug users in the community, they were using clean needles. They were protected. Because the tremendous costs of managing, even one drug addict over the course of many hospital visits and things like that is so high, this program was amazing. It saved a ton of money, it made people suffer less, and it had less mortality, less cost. It really seems like a win-win. The conservative government at the federal level was furious about it. It was really against their worldview, their ethics, their approach to health, said that they didn't want this to happen. So they repeatedly tried to shut it down by cutting funding. They managed to hold on to that. They went to court to try and force them to shut it down, and eventually they lost. But it means that whatever work you want to do, you need to be under the consideration of what is the current politics. So, anybody who's working in climate science in Canada right now, if you're not familiar with it, is in a lot of trouble. It's very difficult. You can't communicate your findings without going through, 8 levels of government before you get approval to even speak to a reporter. So, even about the most basic questions. And the other con is that your research goals would be externally directed. So if you work in, Toronto Public Health, well, it's not like when you're an academic that you say, I'm really interested in meditation and I'm going to work on that for the next 5 years. They're going to be coming to you and saying, okay, we need a bedbug strategy. And so that's your work. Now, you're still doing good. You just have a little bit less freedom. So industry. Industry means you're going to be working for a company. Now, that could be for-profit in the sense that you're working in a non-research position for a company that is doing, maybe non-health work. So say you have an international size company. We had done some work with Rogers before. And they might say, we want somebody to design an employee health program for us from the bottom up. So you might not be involved in a profit-generating activity, but you'd still be working in the business world. And it's a very different reality than working in any of these other institutions. It's fast. When you're working in business and people are making or losing money, depending on you getting your work done, things happen right away, which is a very different climate. If you're involved in something that's a profit-generating activity, well, it means that you're going to need to make money. Otherwise, they're going to cancel your project. So, now, that being said, there are a lot of opportunities. Like you're saying with college, once you're in the door, you can go a lot of places. So, if you have a master's in science in kinesiology, you're not going to necessarily go and get a job at Apotex, working in pharmaceuticals, but you're closer to that. You could take other courses, you could prepare yourself, and once you get in the door, you can continue working. You can get more money. You can also you don't have to stick with your research skills for health if you're working in government. So one of the graduates from our lab now works at TELUS. So she's an analyst there and trainer. So the skills of, spreading knowledge, running statistics, all that stuff has uses elsewhere. And the last one is agency or institutional. So what I mean by that is an institution would be, for example, a hospital, any of those large organizations that are nonprofit, and an agency is nonprofit advocacy groups, typically. So if you have passion for heart research, you might work for Canadian Heart and Stroke. Or you might work for, one of the cancer organizations that for the cure or something like that, where you could be involved in dispersing funding. And once you're working in one of those positions, you are eligible to conduct research and you can apply for grants and stuff like that. And it lets you be involved in advocacy, trying to make changes happen, and it lets you be involved in knowledge translation, which is what I mean by knowledge translation is the process of taking research findings and actually making people do something different with that. So, if it comes to a new hand washing protocol that somebody else from academia has done research on, the government has decided it's cost effective. Now you're working in the hospital. Now you have to figure out a way to make doctors and nurses actually add one more thing to their schedule when they're already exhausted and had it up to here with all these confusing dictates from 1,000 steps up above. So it's your job to understand the place that people are coming from, teach them why things are important, and make your program work for the people who are actually living that. Now, if you're working in a large organization, like UHN or another hospital network, something like that, the pace of change can be pretty slow. Things have to go through a lot of different levels of management, and a lot of things are tied to the fiscal year. You have the budget cycle that affects what you're able to do. And if you're working for a nonprofit agency, their cash flow is not necessarily as stable as something in any of these other sectors. So if you're working for a relatively small charity, maybe your starting pay is not so high, but if it is, for example, the next year they've done something to upset Stephen Harper and their funding gets cut, your position might disappear. So there are challenges, but there's also a lot of opportunities. So I want to talk about some of the key skills and what these mean. I'm sure you guys have heard these all before. And what this means for you going into a career and thinking about grad school, thinking about what the hell am I going to do with kinesiology after I'm done. So these are really broad categories. There's a few things about being professional. So part of that is the really basic stuff. When you're going into a job, you conduct yourself nicely, dress nicely, you get an email address that's like, don't use Hotmail anymore. Gmail is okay, Gmail's totally fine, but it shouldn't be like, babyxx99@gmail.com, not okay. Okay? You need to be there on time. I'm really bad at this. I'm very bad at being not punctual, and it's very embarrassing. Like when you make those little mistakes over time, it sets the tone. It's the same thing when you're applying for a job and you're writing your resume. Imagine the person who's got a stack of resumes in front of them. They have to decide between 50 people who are applying for this job. If there's a typo on your cover letter, I'll throw it in the garbage. Because I just need any excuse to get rid of you to make my job easier, right? So if you make one mistake on the front, that sets the tone for the interaction. And if you come in and you start off, being underdressed or rumpled or late, then people immediately see you, and you're going to have to earn your way back into a better perception of yourself. Okay? And some of the other stuff that I say about working well with others. So it's not just about being part of a team. It's about knowing people's strengths. Don't start out judging people. If you see somebody that's coming in, just like I'm saying, you're going to be judged, you also don't want to be doing that to other people. Because it may be that you're on your second day of the job and you see somebody in a dirty hoodie coming around, and it turns out that's the supervisor who's relaxed, and you've just been saying, what the hell's that guy doing here? So there's also another thing that I would say about working with others, and it's something that I've learned working on other projects, which is that if you're working as a team, everybody on the team has value. There's a reason why you're there. And it's to your benefit if people know that you are looking out for them as part of the team, then they will look out for you. There's reciprocity. So I'll never forget, it was a large group meeting on one of these other projects that I had worked on. And one of the people showed me, just by action, not by saying it, but just the importance of making sure that you point out other people's contributions, the people who matter. So we're in the large group meeting, and she says, by the way, Ross, I wanted to say thanks to Daniel he did a great job on getting this data file ready for us. We couldn't have done it otherwise. And it's the same thing. If I'm in my lab meetings, we had our Rogers meetings on the study that I coordinated this summer. When somebody does a good job, and our supervisor is there, I say, by the way, Paul, Arsh did a fantastic job with this challenging client this week. So I just want to make sure you know that. So people know that you're looking out for them. They look out for you in return. And it's not about, you know, a strategy, it's about you're being a good person, it comes back to you. But it also sets a tone, because if somebody maybe hadn't thought of being on the team meaning that before, you're setting a tone and an expectation that is more positive, more collegial. So knowledge, I talked about those courses in SPSS, Vigo, etc. If there's courses that offer you something useful, a skill that you can use, just like you're saying about, you know, knowing what is relevant to your career, what is going to boost you, you go out and find those. You take moments to look back at yourself and say, what skill am I missing that I need? What was going to improve my ability to participate in this project next time? It's planning, knowing, you know, how much time things are going to take, when you need a course, and knowing your limitations. If you identify an area that you're weak in, say you're weak in stats, yeah, one option is to just say, yeah, I don't know stats, I'm going to go ask somebody else. Or another option is to take action to fix that. Last things, communication. Making yourself understood is really important. Being able to communicate fluidly, being able to read material, understand it, and present it to other people is very important. I talked about knowledge translation, interacting with non-experts. You need to be able to make sure that you can articulate complex topics to people who might not have the same background as you. Take care. Writing skills. If your writing is bad, you look bad, even if your ideas are good. So part of that is taking the time to get things done early and practice. And presentation skills. So, you know, having the knowledge of how to make a good slide deck, how to communicate without just having all of your text written on the slide, etc. And motivation. So doing stuff like coming to these seminars and going beyond. When you are part of a team and somebody in charge knows that you can be the guy or the girl who's, you know, if they say, I need somebody who is able to go and recruit these participants. I need somebody who can, you know, fix the computer. I need somebody who can, you know, get these papers, you know, all the administrative stuff done for this grant application. If you make yourself valuable and you show that you're trustworthy, that you're efficient, and that you get things done, people will earn that trust. And also, doing the boring stuff, like reading your email, has been, I can't understate or overstate how important it is to read your email.
So yes, I'm a faculty member now at Humber College, University of Guelph, Humber, but I was born and raised in York. I feel like I'm home, back on home soil, feels good to be back. Kind of miss it. Sometimes, probably not so much, but I know I don't have much time, just less than 30 minutes, about 25 minutes to, I guess, share with you. I guess the reason why I was asked to come here is to kind of share how my academic and extracurricular pursuits kind of shaped my career path, and maybe based on kind of my journey, some things might click for you or open or give you ideas for maybe what you want to pursue after you're finished school. So here's what I was hoping to kind of share with you guys in the next 25 minutes or so, is what credentials I have and why I chose specific credentials, because in the field of kinesiology, health, and fitness, there's just a plethora of just different credentials. So if you're still trying to figure out, you know, what type of credentials you think you should get, or what type of continuing education opportunities you're interested in, maybe I can provide some insight there. And then just share with you some field experience, some places that I've had the opportunity to work, and how each kind of position and project that I worked on kind of led me to where I am now at Humber. And then just what is life like as a college prof, and how it's different than being a university prof, because there is some notable differences. And then just some personal lessons that I've kind of learned along the way that maybe I think can extrapolate to just about any endeavor that you're interested in doing. So hopefully we get through all four. So here's the paperwork. Here's my paperwork. Here's what I've accomplished on paper. I did my undergrad here in kinesiology. And after that, loved it so much, did a master's here as well. So the master's degree that I did here, and I will talk about this more a little bit later, it's called the Master of Fitness Science. It is a non-thesis master's degree. But I'll come back to that in a second. The three or the two certifications that I currently have. One is the CSEP Certified Exercise Physiologist. You guys have heard of CSEP before? So the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, CSEP, is the principal body for physical activity, health and fitness research and regulation of health and fitness professionals in Canada. So I'm certified by them as an exercise physiologist. We can talk more about that a little bit later in the Q&A period. I also have a certification from the NSCA, so that's the National Strength and Conditioning Association, as a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So that organization is the principal body for regulating strength and conditioning professionals, essentially, in North America, so the US and Canada. So professionals who are certified for the NSCA are qualified to work in high-performance settings. So working with athletes, or even with people who are applying for physically demanding occupations like firefighting and that type of thing. And a question that I always get is, why do I have two? Why did I choose these two particular ones? I mean, there are two certifications. How many do you really need? For me, the reason why I chose these two is the CSEP, CEP, the Certified Exercise Physiologist, it's a health-related fitness certification, so it qualifies you to work with people who are more interested in improving just overall health. It trains you to work with people who are high-risk populations, so they have some form of diagnosed chronic condition like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, that type of thing. Whereas the NSCA and the CSCS certification, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, trains you to work with people who are developing or training for performance. So speed, agility, quickness, that type of thing. So I figured if I had both, it would increase the scope of the people that I could actually work with. So they kind of complement each other. Just they're different. One's health related, one's performance related. So I got them both to kind of cover all grounds. So I did those while I was actually in school. The one that I'm currently in the process of getting is becoming a registered kinesiologist. So I'm sure you guys all know by now, kinesiology is now a regulated profession in Ontario specifically. The college is regulated by the College of Kinesiologists of Ontario, CKO. So I'm currently in the process of doing that one, and just to answer this question now, because it is an important question, because there's just so many credentials. If your goal is to work in Ontario, that's where you want to work, I would highly suggest and recommend taking this route. If you have to choose between the certifications that are available, becoming a registered kin would probably be, in my opinion, long-term, better for you, just because this is government regulated, government sanctioned. It's a regulated health profession now. Just the organizational structure of it now puts kinesiologists at the same level as physiotherapists and massage therapists. That same type of organizational structure and regulation. Whereas the other two organizations, they are respectable and reputable and all of that, but they're self-regulated. It's not government regulated. So long term, something to consider might be getting the registered kin. We can talk more about that later. Some things that I've done kind of along the way. So my first position ever, my first foot in the door ever in the field of just health and fitness was at a place called the Fitness Source. I was 18 years old, just finished in high school, got accepted into the program here at York for kin, and I really wanted to get just some job related to the field. It's the best I could do at the time. So what this place is basically a fitness equipment retail store. So people who just want to purchase different types of fitness equipment for their home or their studio would come to a store like this, shop around, or speak to somebody like me, the sales rep, and kind of figure out what they want, what they need, that type of thing. This might actually be one of the most important jobs I've probably ever had that helped me to kind of explode in my career. Why? Because it's at this place, at this job, is where I really learned the importance and the value of selling and customer service. Because, and I'm sure, just from speaking and talking to other scientists and kinesiologists, when people hear the word selling, it just has bad or negative connotations. Like selling, you think of like snake oil salesman or just used car salesman or somebody who's trying to get you to buy something you don't want. When that's not really what sales and customer service is about. What I learned at this job is that customer service is really, it's creative problem solving. It's really what it is at its very core. When people, in the helping profession, when people come to you, what I've learned here, or in this environment anyways, when people come to you, they're coming to you with two things. One is some problem of some sort. In this example, or here anyways, their problem is that they need to get some exercise into their life, maybe buying some home equipment is the way that they did it. But regardless, they have a problem that they're trying to solve. And the second thing is they're coming to you as a content expert with the expectation that you as the expert is going to help them solve the problem. They come with a problem, they're coming with the expectation that you, the professional, is going to help them solve the problem, whatever their problem is. And it's not that you're trying to get them to buy something they don't want, it's you're trying to help them get what they need in their lives, whatever it is. If it's somebody who needs to lose weight, you're helping them, showing them how to lose weight. That is a form of selling. Selling a lecture topic, selling your thesis defense, all of that is selling. So it's so much more than just making money and just gonna get people to buy. But so I had that job. I was really enjoying it. I was doing my undergraduate degree at the same time as this. I was working here on the weekends. So because I was so interested in just the fitness assessment realm and just training and exercise, I tried to research different opportunities to kind of narrow my focus. And conveniently enough, there's a certificate stream here at York called the Exercise or Fitness Assessment Exercise Counseling Certificate, which basically allows you, if you're accepted into it, so you apply to this. You guys have heard of this before? So it's here at York, it's offered, you can do it concurrently with your undergraduate degree. I just one night just went through the website, just looking at different opportunities, came across this. So you apply to it, once you get in, you take a specialized set of courses. In this case, they were oriented towards fitness assessment and exercise counseling, very practicum based. The year that I applied and got in, they took in about 20. So it was around second year that I found out about this and applied, and was fortunate my grades were high enough that I got in. So once I was accepted, now my third and fourth year were kind of determined for me almost, because I had to take a certain course load, certain courses. One in particular was an advanced fitness assessment course that only people in the certificate had the opportunity to take. This is in Bazoon, actually, in the basement downstairs in the lab. This is our advanced fitness assessment class. So in this certificate stream, we got exposed to high performance fitness assessment. So working with the leagues, I had the opportunity to do that. I think in this picture, it's their farm team, the Toronto Marlies. Trial FC came through our lab one time. We're doing assessments like VO2 max testing, max strength testing, that type of thing. Also, in the lab was experience that I gained occupational fitness testing, specifically firefighting. So York is an accredited institution for administering the standard fitness test for firefighters. So I had the opportunity to do that, actually administer the test for firefighters as well. We can chat about that later. In the certificate, I also had the opportunity to be part of the team, the assessment team that administers the fitness test for prospective professional athletes going into the NHL. So it's called the NHL Scouting Combine. If you've never heard of the word combine, it's just an annual event that happens every year where all prospective NHL players, their hopes is to get drafted into the pros. They come to this event and they basically undergo a series of physical tests in front of the scouts and the coaches and all of that, just to showcase their physical abilities. This was my station. This is the Wingate station. You guys ever had the opportunity to do the Wingate in the program here? Wingate test is like a 30-second all-out, really, really intense. That's what's going on in this particular slide. So I had the opportunity to do that as well. Also in the certificate, a component of it, we were assigned a client. We were basically personal training. So personal training was a part of the certificate as well. So everyone in the certificate, so 20 of us were assigned a client that we didn't know, somebody from the York community. And we trained them here at Tate McKenzie in the gym right over here. And I wasn't a personal trainer up until this point, so we were personal trainers for the winter semester of one of the years. I think it was fourth year. And a lot of university-educated exercise professionals, they kind of frown when they hear the term personal training too, because they feel like it's an entry level, it's too easy, it's really easy to get into, it's a simple job. They might feel like it's not worth using a degree to be a personal trainer. Being exposed to the field of personal training and being a personal trainer for a little while, I can tell you this, as a university-educated personal trainer, if that's the path you want to go, you could charge like Starbucks prices, okay, for your services, first of all. Secondly, so at Humber, we meet with industry partners annually, on an annual basis, to kind of survey and find out what the graduates that we are producing out of the school, what are they lacking, what are they looking for when they are trying to employ somebody. And there's 3 skills that employers are identifying that it seems like today's graduates are lacking more than others. It's interpersonal skills, communication skills, and social skills. So not the hard science skills, it's not that lacking physiology knowledge or training knowledge or assessment knowledge. It's those softer skills, just communication, social skills, just being able to interact with other people. Personal training, even if you do it temporarily, is a great vehicle for just learning how, for just developing those skills, those communication skills, those softer social skills in a one-on-one environment. If you can be a great personal trainer, you can almost become a great anything in the field of kinesiology, really. So something to think about. So I had the opportunity to do that as well. Let me make sure I get through a lot of this stuff here.
Don't worry, you can take the extra time.
Sure, I'll go into either one.
Mine has a lot of range. I can go.
Okay. All right. But yes, I was doing all these things, all these diverse things, right? High performance, personal training, occupational fitness testing. And I was loving every minute of it, but I was coming to the end of the program. Like it was fourth year, I had to graduate, go into the real world, as they say. But I didn't really want it to end. I wanted to stick and keep learning and being involved with this type of stuff. This is what I really was interested in, just more being ground zero, administering the service, the practical aspect of it. So when I started researching fourth year different graduate programs, I came across this one, which is also offered at York, called the Master of Fitness Science, MFSC. It is a non-thesis degree. So I looked at this and I thought, well, I had to sit down and really think about, what am I trying to get into here? Because there's thesis options, there's non-thesis options. And a lot of people ask, well, why did you do a thesis option? Well, I knew that I didn't really want to pursue a career in research. I was less interested in being the person who develops the knowledge and furthers the knowledge. I was more interested in being the person who consumes the knowledge and tries to use it and administer it out in the field. That's what I was more interested in. So when I came across this degree, this graduate degree, and I literally read the description, it was just, that was it. I'll just read it to you. It's just that one little part right there. The Masters of Fitness Science degree involves coursework and extensive practical experience. Once I read the extensive practical experience, I was sold. To prepare students for a variety of professional careers, including health promotion, sport and occupational fitness applications, and exercise management for persons with chronic disease. And it involved extensive lab and field work. So that was it. It was a done deal. I had already been working with the supervisor who was running this degree. Her name was Dr. Veronica Jadnik. So she accepted me, she agreed to take me on, and I was in this program now. The biggest thing that I was exposed to in this program that I really enjoyed the most was being a TA, teaching. This was my first exposure to actually teaching. So I was a TA for KIN 1020. I think everybody in this room has taken 1020. First year of fitness assessment and health course. I TA'd the lab component. First day, first class that I ever did it for sure. I was petrified and scared. There was like 30 people in the room. I felt like I was the same age almost as all of them, so it felt awkward being in front of the classroom. But just the feeling of just being in the room and just facilitating learning and just seeing learning happen, it was intoxicating. I loved it, and I was addicted to that, just the feeling of being in the classroom and just facilitating learning. And that was my first kind of exposure to teaching. And from that point on, I always had just the profession of teaching at the back of my mind, being a TA. But aside from just TAing, obviously there was more work as a graduate student. So taking courses, one of the projects that were taking place during the time that I was a master's student was something called the prepaid project. Prepaid, no, it doesn't mean that we took money first and then but the prepaid is an acronym for Pre-Diabetes Physical Activity Intervention Delivery Project. I'm not sure who came up with the name, pretty good name, but I'll explain a little bit. This was the team that was involved with our project. Drs. Michael Riddell, you probably maybe had him for something. That's Veronica Jadnik, my master's supervisor. Chip is a PhD student here. Me and one of my former lab mates. Another person who was involved in this project, who's not in the picture, but was one of the leading individuals, is Paul Whitwell. Popular guy in this room, I know, who has multitudes of graduate students here. So this team, what this prepaid project entailed, it was basically a community outreach program. It was health promotion in nature, and it's a small description of it right here. The goal of the program was to identify individuals who were at the highest risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And much research has shown that there are specific cultural populations, for example, Chinese, South Asian, African, Caribbean, who they're at highest risk for developing type 2 diabetes. And the goal was to get to them, target, and provide some form of health education, fitness, and exercise information. One location that this project was delivered out of was a place called Black Creek Community Health Center. I think the last guest speaker actually works here, right? So you might have heard of Black Creek Community Health Center. Basically a not-for-profit, multidisciplinary organization that delivers services covering a wide range of just health and overall wellness to just a very diverse group of people. That picture on the bottom right it's not Black Creek, but it's part of the program that Black Creek offers. So this is me just basically running a group exercise class for the residents at this building. So just to kind of connect the story here, the prepaid project, one of the satellite sites for it was at Black Creek Community Health Center. So I was involved with kind of delivering and working with the people who are at high risk for developing type 2 diabetes, but I was approaching the end of my master's now, close to this, and the project was still going on, but I was graduating. But at the same time that this was going on, Black Creek had established something pretty innovative. It was called, they called it the exercise education room. It was an exercise education component that they had at this community health center, which I think was the first and only community health center to have exercise and physical activity as part of their overall just kind of health promotion plan. But the true mastermind behind this when I was at Black Creek was another famous face probably for a lot of the grad students here is Mr. Noah Wayne, who was also, he was here but doing his PhD work at Black Creek. And because I was graduating, he was also kind of starting up his study, and he was working with actual diagnosed type 2 diabetics, and he needed somebody to work with those patients. So I had the certification, I was a CEP, I was qualified to work with high-risk populations. So I was working with the participants from Noah's study, the type 2 diabetics, basically one-on-one. I was their exercise therapist, I guess, personal trainer for a diabetic in this situation. And as most innovative projects usually go, there's always funding challenges for programs that are elaborate, such as this. So what was happening? So I was graduated, this was my primary source of income. Noah was paying me through his research funding to help to deliver this service. But there were some challenges with the funding, and because this was my primary source of income, I had to start looking other places because I've got to eat, got bills to pay. So, and they knew this, so I had to I was thinking about leaving, obviously, leaving Black Creek, but Noah, wonderful guy that he is, he wanted to keep me within the family, keep me on the team. He didn't want to let go of me yet, because he knew he was going to get funding for the next phase of the study. So what happened was, he told me about another project that was starting up. So he kind of put my name into the ear of one of his colleagues at the time, Daniel Santamina, probably another famous face for the graduate students here, who was doing his research work downtown across the city at Princess Margaret Hospital. So he was looking at the effect of exercise on health outcomes in prostate cancer patients. And he now needed somebody. It was almost kind of fairy tale timing. So this funding over here was running out, but then this project with Daniel was just about to start up. So it was kind of pretty good timing in that sense. He needed somebody to coordinate the research project. So this particular study that he was doing at this time, he was looking at the effect of group exercise versus personal training in improving health outcomes in prostate cancer patients. Is one better than the other? Group exercise versus personal training in terms of adherence and improving just the patient outcomes. But I was not the person who delivered the group exercise or the personal training. It was actually, Humber University students. This is the first kind of Humber connection now, getting to where I am pretty much now. But there's a course that third-year kinesiology students take at the University of Guelph, Humber, where they basically do some form of a field placement. So they were working with Daniel at Princess Margaret Hospital. They were the personal trainers and delivering the group exercise classes. And my job was more kind of, in this case, supervisory, just overlooking the whole program, making sure that participant safety was upheld and data entry and all that was being done the way it was supposed to. So that was going on. That study was the summer of 2011. This is where we are now. The summer of 2011. This was one summer study. But when this study was over, again, I was out of work. But so somehow, this fairy tale timing, University of Guelph Humber was undergoing some serious expansion and exploding enrollment, and so was Humber College in their fitness programs. And they had a lot of fitness lab classes at University of Guelph Humber and Humber College. So they were looking to hire somebody who could run the labs. It was a brand new position at that institution. University of Guelph Humber and Humber College is basically the same place. We'll talk about that later as well. But, so this job posting came up for exercise sciences, laboratory technician, or lab tech as they called me. I applied, I had the exact skill set that they were looking for in terms of running their fitness labs. So somebody to just manage the assessment labs, so doing things like, you guys probably heard of metabolic carts and open circuit spirometry, basically the equipment that measures oxygen consumption, used for VO2 max testing, somebody to calibrate it, make sure that it's running properly, who can help with VO2 max testing, taking blood samples, making sure that the analyzers work, all that type of operational work. That was my main duty. But it just so happened that because enrollment numbers were exploding, they had this extra section of a college physiology course that they didn't have an instructor for, and I had a master's. So to teach at post-secondary, you need at least a master's for the college environment. So they asked me, would you be interested in teaching one physiology section? I said, yeah, right, that's where I jumped on that right away, because I knew, remember at the back of my mind, I wanted to get back into teaching. That was the opportunity. So I was teaching one section of a physiology class. That was only 4 hours a week, and then the remaining 30 hours, I was their lab tech, running the labs. And that was for 2 years. So from 2011 to 2013, I'm embarrassed to even tell you how many hours I was just putting in to just running the labs. They were only paying me for maybe like 24 to 30 hours, but I was easily putting in a lot more than that. Just to I wanted to be the person who just became an asset, right? I was learning everything I possibly could about just the ins and outs of the equipment, just every single component. So if there was ever a problem, they needed to call me to solve the problem. So I just started just demonstrating that I was an asset to the organization in that sense. So then they eventually started giving me more and more classes to teach, and the ratio kind of switched. So I was 90% lab tech, 10% teacher, but then as time started going on, it was less time spent being lab tech, more time being a teacher, and then this posting came up for a full-time teaching position. Put in the application. I was already part of the Guelph Humber family, so they knew my face, they knew the work I did. I guess the student feedback questionnaire was pretty good as well, so that helped with my application. Which finally leads me to kind of where I am now. Most professional I've ever been. Most professional I've ever been, I guess, right? I am currently a college professor. I guess that's my title now over at Humber College. Just to give you an idea of how our programs are set up. There's a cluster of programs. So the department that I work for is called the School of HRT, Hospitality, Recreation, and Tourism. There's a cluster of exercise science and fitness, sport-related programs, sport management, rec and leisure, massage therapy. But the three that I am directly involved in and teach in are the Fitness and Health Promotion Diploma Program. It's a 2-year program. The Bachelor of Applied Science in Kinesiology is a 4-year degree offered through the University of Guelph Humber, and a 1-year postgraduate certificate program for individuals who they have a degree in kinesiology already, so they choose to come back to kind of supplement their degree with more practical lab experience. So kinesiology students usually who have graduated and they felt like, they want to move into a career where they're the practitioner, more so than anything, to in the actual workplace. They come here to just develop workplace skills. And in the college environment, one of what colleges are known for, basically, and one of the major things in the program is their internships. So each program, the fitness and health promotion, the massage therapy, exercise science, lifestyle management, they all have an internship at the end. So it's almost like it's forcing you to get a foot into the door into the industry. So after you've taken a couple of years of courses, the final part is you just do an off-campus internship. And then a lot of the time, students who have just demonstrated themselves, so they get to choose where they do their internship. And if they can prove themselves in that semester, a lot of the times they just get a job right after. That's just how the program is kind of set up. These are just some pictures of the labs, some of which I teach in. So these are our fitness assessment labs. So doing similar things that you might have done in some of your courses, VO2 max testing, speed, agility, power, all of that good stuff. Over at Humber we have exercise prescription labs. I don't think that's at York yet. Hopefully one day. But basically this is not a gym. These are classrooms, so they kind of simulate the gym environment or a training studio. But in classes like this is where students learn how to coach and develop training programs and just learn about different cues for different exercises, that type of thing, in an actual setting where you would do those things. Group exercise is also a lab and a class that you would take in all three programs. Learning how to facilitate exercise in group settings is obviously an important skill. I'm not really sure exactly what your job description might entail when you end up working somewhere. It might not always be one-on-one. It might be in a group. There are courses and labs for therapeutic exercise, so for students who are more interested in going the rehab route, rehabilitating musculoskeletal conditions and disorders. There's classes for that as well. Courses in physical demand analysis, so quantifying kind of the demands of different physical occupations, that type of thing. That's what that entails. And then for students who are interested in kind of the cardiac rehab route, there's courses in ECG or electrocardiography, spirometry, that type of testing. You actually do the testing. You practice as though you're actually doing it on a patient. You do stress testing, that type of thing, and learn how to interpret ECGs and that type of thing, if that's what you're interested in doing, cardiac rehab. And then just general health promotion classes. So some of the partnerships that Humber has is with Cardiac Health Foundation. So there might be a course, for example, where students are just delivering education, coming up with pamphlets and flyers, holding workshops and that type of thing for the community. There's lots going on. So what is my job entail as a college professor? How is it different than a university professor? Most of my time, I would say 60% of my time is spent teaching and evaluating. So unlike your typical tenured or tenure-track university professor, I do not have my own lab where I conduct research projects and have graduate students that I'm supervising. Most of my time is spent being actually in the classroom, preparing to be in the classroom, or actually doing some form of evaluation. So marking, doing practical exams, marking tests, assignments, that type of thing. Because in college, the classes are a lot smaller. 35 to 40 is usually the class size. It's much, much smaller, right? Compared to the hundreds that you might have had first and second year, right? So we don't have TAs at college. You do your own marking for all of the students. So that's why it takes quite a bit of time. The second role, I would say maybe 20% of my time is spent in curriculum development activities. So in college, all of the faculty members, we get together on a regular basis, we meet on a weekly basis to make sure that our program is reflecting the current needs of the industry, and making sure that the learning outcomes and all of that is flowing throughout the whole program. So we have all the courses laid out, all the outlines that we continually revise on a regular basis to make sure that it's current and reflective of what employers actually want from our graduates. So that's 20% of my time. I would say another 10% professional development. So because I'm not involved anymore directly with research projects and creating research projects and creating them, the way that we stay current with information as a professional or instructor at the college level is we get new certifications or attend as many workshops as possible, do different facility visits just to see what's current in the field at the time. But professional development it's good for every field, but it's a requirement when you are a faculty member at college that what you're teaching in the classroom is current and relevant at that point in time. So that takes up about 10% of time. This is kind of new, maybe about 5% of my time, because I've been at Humber now for about 3 years. Because in the college environment, it's very teaching and learning centric. It's all about the learning. It's very student centered. Not so much about, say, in the university setting, it's much more about the knowledge and how do we expand the body of knowledge and further this area of research. At the college environment, it's a lot more about the learning, what are we teaching, that type of thing. So when a new faculty member gets hired, somebody who's been there a little longer kind of just shows them how the whole system works, how the different online teaching materials work, different resources for the teacher for just being successful as their first year teaching, basically. So I have one mentee right now that I'm just kind of showing the ropes to, how the policies work at Humber. I myself was a mentee, obviously, the first year I was there. That's about 5% of time. The other 5% of my time, and this is also pretty new, is trying to figure out new innovative ways of teaching and learning beyond what happens in just the normal classroom setting. So one thing, for example, that we're working on, myself and another faculty member, we pitched this idea to our department. There's basically a field trip. A field trip that students have the opportunity to decide if they want to go on. It's a study abroad trip that we're thinking about doing in next spring. But basically the idea is, for the students that are interested, we're going to fly out to California and then basically take a tour down the West Coast, because there's a lot of high-profile training facilities down on that side. A lot of very respected and well-known strength coaches and trainers down on that side as well. And basically just going to the different facilities over about 10 days, learning the training methods, seeing how they operate, different facilities, that type of thing. We got approved, so it's going to happen. But it's going to be capped off at 20 students, so we'll see how that goes. Keep you guys posted on that one, but it's mainly directed to our students over at our school. But this is an example of learning by actually going out in the field via a field trip. Obviously a very valuable way to learn what's going on in the field. One of my most favorite things about being a college teacher is after students graduate and they start working out in the field, you get these calls and emails, come see where I work now, come see where I work now, and check me out. And I get to go to all these like really awesome, completely random facilities and do the most random things, like throw tires into Lake Ontario. Like how do you explain that? But so this particular place is it's called Alpha Obstacle Training. One of our University of Guelph graduates opened it up. Jesse Bruce, you know Jesse Bruce? Yeah. I love that place. But I love that, just being able to just go and just be part of a group class or just see how their facility works now that they're out in the field. It's pretty cool. I'm like way over time now, I'm so sorry. This is the last couple of slides, but if I were to kind of summarize all the lessons I kind of learned along the way, and then put them into maybe 3 takeaway points that maybe you can apply to just about any endeavor that you're interested in. Here's my three pieces of advice to just take home. And you'll see that it's not really out of the ordinary at all. First, number one. Good old-fashioned just networking. And I'm sure you've heard this before. And it sounds mean, but at the end of the day, your degree, the paper, it is just a piece of paper. It's a very expensive and challenging paper to get, but it's a ticket. It's a ticket that allows you to buy the entrance into the league, the professional league, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win, right, in the league. Like the Toronto Maple Leafs or the NHL, but they don't win. You don't want to be the Toronto Maple Leafs in the professional setting. You know what I mean? But we're getting to a point where it's not just about who you know, but who also knows you. So I'm talking about just exposing yourself, showcasing your skills, going to conferences, workshops, seminars. I'm preaching to the choir because it's a handful of you that are attending events like this. Just getting yourself out there, being in front of as many people as possible whenever you get the chance. And by networking, I'm not talking about sharing pages on Facebook or liking Instagram photos or retweeting. Not that kind of networking. I mean, pick up the phone, call somebody, or physically go to a facility and meet people. Nothing will ever replace that face-to-face human communication ever. When you like something, you blend into the noise. That's not networking. So for sure networking. Second, very random picture here. This is like one of our auditors. Just to explain what's going on in this video. It's not what we do every day at Humber, by the way. It's at a health fitness fair. First team to create a human push-up wall, one prize. But anyways, second take-home point is to develop multiple skills. And that sounds obvious, but let me explain a little bit. If your goal is to work in the industry, being a one-trick pony and specializing in just one thing too much might not make you too marketable. The way you should kind of think about this is developing multiple skills multiplies your value as a professional. And in the field of kinesiology and exercise science, there is a lot of skills to be had. There's so much that you can add to your repertoire as a professional. There's a whole long list, not to read everything to you, but assessment and training, all the hard sciences skills, but also all the softer skills, communication, sales, marketing. Are you also the person that can not only do one-on-one training or group training, can you also update the website or market, do presentations, start a project, carry out the project, maintain the equipment. That's an important thing to consider. There's no skill that's too small. It all adds up. It's like starting with a small snowball, but then every skill you add is just getting bigger and bigger and adding it to your repertoire. No skill is too small.
Think of it from an employer's perspective.
Think of it from an employer's perspective.
You are an employer.
Like imagine you are an employer, you have two candidates, two very nice people that you want to work with. You know, but one is Clark Kent and the other is Superman. Who are you going to hire?
Clark Kent's a nice
You
guy.
know, Clark Kent's a nice guy, but you're gonna hire Superman. Why? Because he's more valuable. Can do more things. Same idea. Multiply your skills. Become a superwoman. Superman.
And the last thing.
And the last thing. And I'm done. Promise. I'm supposed to be 30 minutes, but okay.
This one I stole from.
This one I stole from Mr. Will Smith. He said this in an interview one time,
Stuck with me forever.
and it stuck with me forever.
Be willing to
He
die.
said, "Be willing to die on a treadmill."
Figurative, not literally.
It's figurative, not literally. Just let me explain. He said to the interviewer.
Look at the interviewer and
He looked at the interviewer and he basically said, if you and me get on a treadmill and we're running side by side, there's only two possible outcomes.
One,
One, either you're going to get off first, or two, I'm going to die. That's the only two outcomes. You stop or I die. And he was basically talking about just work ethic.
Sheer work ethic.
Sheer work ethic, not being skilled or talented, just putting in work. There will never be a replacement for just putting in just hard work, whatever that means to you. Just long hours sometimes, being the first one on the door, last one to leave, 12-hour days. If you're not willing to do that from time to time, it'll be really hard for you to really just excel. Because there are people who are doing that, right? They're willing to die on the treadmill. So, yeah. That's all I got for you guys. I'm sorry for going over time, but stay in touch for sure. Jot down my email. I can write it down. If you ever want a tour of Will Humber, our labs, for sure. Shoot me an email. Take you around.
Any questions for Ajay for now, guys? I have one. If you're already in your fourth or fifth year of bachelor's degree and you haven't really got exposed to a lot of projects that you can do, being a kinesiology student, do you have any other options that students can do if you haven't got exposed as of yet?
Sorry.
Just people who are in like fourth or fifth year of bachelor's degree in kinesiology, if they haven't got exposed to a lot of different projects like you did in your last year, would you give any suggestions of what can they get involved in so they can kind of get experience in actual real world?
Right. Okay. So the first thing I would say to answer that is to figure out kind of what area you're most interested in. Whether are you interested in working with athletes? Are you more interested in working with high risk populations, health-related fitness, general population? Who do you want to really work with? What type of workplace do you want to be in? And then once you have that kind of figured out, pick up the phone, go on Google, start searching for places that you might be interested in working at. And just it could be as simple as asking them if they will take on a volunteer. You can volunteer. I know it's tough to do if you're a student with debts and that type of thing and expensive. But if you have another job as well, like a part-time job, volunteer somewhere that you want to work. Most places will take on volunteers just to expose you to what they're doing and to be involved with the projects. No, you might not be getting paid at that time, but it could lead to something you could definitely get paid and make it a career for sure.
So volunteering would be the first thing if you haven't got exposed to volunteering.
Sorry?
So volunteering would be the first thing that you should be doing if
Absolutely,
you need to
for
get
sure.
them.
For sure you would look for.
For sure, you would look for maybe paid positions first, but I mean, if what's being offered at that time is not really up your alley, then volunteer for something specifically where you would want to be. Yeah.
A question. Is it easy to, well, I wouldn't say easy, but is it really difficult to get a teaching position out of college with just your master's? I know it worked for you with all your experience, but for everybody else applying, do you see like a lot of PhD students trying to apply as well?
I've never applied. I know Dan was teaching for years, but Dan's awesome, and you're obviously awesome. So
It's tough regardless if you have a PhD or a master's.
Okay.
Securing a full-time teaching.
Yeah.
I still don't even know how I did it. I swear to you, I don't even know how I did it half the time. But so
So to teach at the college, you need
So to teach at the college, you need at least a master's. They do, on most job postings, they say preferred PhD, and there's a mixture of us on the full-time team. Some of us have PhDs, some of us have masters, but I think there needs to be a certain amount of PhDs there to teach the higher level classes, because they're more, adept at what's going on in the research world of that, for that topic. But to have a master's, to secure a teaching position, you need to have a lot of field work experience to supplement that, because a lot of the college classes are very applied in nature. There's a lot of lab classes, and it's all about workplace preparation. So if you've been in the workplace and you've done a bunch of different things, then for sure they would consider that and weigh that pretty heavily, as they did for.
So they don't just give an automatic. So they don't just give an automatic preference to PhD.
No, there's no automatic preference. Definitely no automatic preference. It's all in how you sell yourself. Going back to selling.
Just one more question on top of what Anchor asked. If you are a master's student and you take specific courses, does that count if you are applying as a college professor? So if you have some experience in, for example, teaching in physiology or versus anatomy, would that, if there's hiring for anatomy, would that TA still count?
So of course, they're going to look at all of your teaching experience, whether you were, you did it as a student or you did it after you graduated. You're going to consider all of your teaching experience. And then I guess going back to to answer both questions, very seldom will a person be hired as a full-time faculty member without being part-time first.
Very rarely does that
So
happen.
very rarely does that ever happen where somebody from external is just hired into the system full-time teaching. They usually might give you a course here, and then you're still doing other things out in the field, so you're doing kind of part-time teaching, full-time industry work, just to sample you as a teacher. So that happens for a while, so they might do that for somebody like me. I just had TA experience, but then they gave me one section of physiology to see how I would do with that, and one became 2, because the feedback was good, 2 became 3, and then eventually it all adds up, and then when posting comes, all of that teaching experience just adds up, plus your field work experience, which they value as well, would make for a pretty good application. But they do definitely consider teaching.
Sorry, one more question. Because this is exactly what I want to do. So I did my undergrad in psych and neuroscience, but now I'm doing my master's in kin. So if I were to apply for a job, would I have to just teach kin, or could I teach psych and neuro? Because I did my undergrad in that.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
It's not based on what you did your master's on?
Regardless of what your formal background is, you could teach several different courses across the different programs, for sure.
Once you're through the door, it's really about what you can do. And if, especially like you said, when you're working part-time and you are, have a job in industry that's relevant, then you're staying on top of that field.
Exactly. So most of the teachers that are employed at Humber College, most of them are part-time, because that's what they value. The reason for that is because those part-time individuals are spending most of their time out in the industry, and they bring that experience into the classroom, which is very valuable for the student. So there's, just to tell you specifically at Humber, full-time in the fitness team, there's maybe only 10 of us. Just 10 of us that are considered full-time. And then our job is, aside from just the teaching, but more like the whole curriculum development as I was mentioning before.
Just to touch on that, getting in the door as a part-time teacher to get a course, what are the chances that you would get to design your course versus the other course that already has a curriculum developed?
So what do we mean by curriculum development? So the course outlines are what's kind of been developed, and the learning outcomes have been developed. So how you deliver the course and meet those learning outcomes is completely up to you. So if you say you're a part-time teacher and you've been assigned to teach physiology, like in my case, there's a course outline, there's a course description, and the learning outcomes that, what does the student have to learn by the end of that class? Like that's listed on the course outline. How you go about teaching that is completely up to you. The slides that you use, the way that you teach it, the order that you teach is really up to the instructor. As long as you're covering like the specific topics, like you need to cover the cardiovascular system, metabolism, and all this. As long as you cover that, you cover it your way.
I just had a question on the certification. So I actually am a CEP as well. So I was just wondering how the strength and conditioning differed, like in terms of difficulty getting it, because I know like the CEP, there is like the slight section you have on athletes, like the 25 hours or whatever you have to do. So how much like extra?
Before I answer your question, let me ask you a question to just kind of refine my answer a little bit. How did you go about getting your CEP? What was the process?
Well, at my undergrad school, which is in Nova Scotia, there's like a stream that you can go through to get it. So then you have to take like all the specific courses, and then you have a full year practicum where you have to do practical experience with.
It's very similar actually to the same.
Yeah, with like cardiac rehab. We had to work with the strength and conditioning coach at Acadia, work with diabetes, work with aging populations, all that. Yeah.
So that's similar to how I got the CEP as well. So it was kind of built into that certificate stream that I was telling you guys about, the fitness assessment and exercise counseling certificate. I got the CEP as a result of doing those courses. The final exam for one of my classes in 4th year, the final exam was the certification exam. So if you passed the final exam, you were certified as the CEP. So that kind of made it easier in a way because it was part of a course.
Yeah.
So the NSCA one, the CSCS, the Strength and Conditioning Specialist, that's not built into any programs that I'm aware of. So to get that specific credential, the NSCA has it laid out on their website. So basically, there's a textbook that you just need to read and just understand everything that's in that textbook. And then you sign up to write their exam. The exam is pretty long. It's for a fitness-related exam. I think it's about 6 hours or so. So there's 2 parts to it, a theory part and what they call a practical.
It's a videos, right?
Yeah, the practical component is a video component. So rather than actually being out in the field, they're showing you videos of people that are doing different things. Might be an exercise, for example, that's being done in horrible form, and there might be a question related to that. How would you correct the form? That type of thing. But I actually found that getting the NSCA, that strength and conditioning certification, to be tougher than getting the CEP, mainly because at York, and I'm sure most of you know this, there's not much offered in terms of high performance training, high performance assessment, and training programs for athletes and that type of thing, and things like speed, agility, quickness, and all of that. So all that information was kind of new to me. So learning that for the first time and then just taking exams, for me that was kind of tricky. So I'm not sure what your background is, but I found the NSCA certification a little hard.
We had one class we had to take that was just on high performance fitness training, which we did, like agility.
And that would definitely, even that would definitely.
I think it's based on the textbook, but
Right.
I just never wrote the exam because it was kind of like at the time $600 for which one.
Right, exactly. There's no course at York when I was here that used that textbook for a class. Fortunately, to do at Humber, and a few classes that use it. But yeah, it's a pretty thick book, so to get through all that, because you get tested on that pretty rigorously, everything that's in that textbook, that for me was challenging. Yeah, because I hadn't been exposed to that material before.
One last question, anyone? All right, well, thank you very much.
I'll make them.
Dylan Perez. I didn't get a chance to look